Quilty is brought to you by APQS, handcrafted quilting machines. Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Clothworks, inspiring creativity with art on fabric. Havel's Sewing, when you need to cut it close, choose Havel's. B&B, our fabrics, your lifestyle. Quiltology, the urban quilt space.
Quilty.
Hello and welcome to Quilty. Today on the show we have a pretty special guest, I'd say. Let's take a look and learn from one of the best. Join us. Ladies and gentlemen, Marianne Fons. Yay! My mom.
It's so great to be back. I must have done pretty good last time you had me back.
You did okay. We thought we'd have you back on Quilty, and we're really glad you're here. Thank you so much for coming. And Rebecca, more of the family is behind the camera today. It's really cool.
It's great to be in Chicago at Quiltology. I love it. I love it here.
It's fantastic. So we are going to talk about something really cool. You said...
Near and dear to our hearts.
Yeah.
For Mary and me, there are two kind of mats that are really important in our life. It's the yoga mat,
right.
Yoga mat, and the cutting mat.
That's right. And we're going to talk about the cutting mat today. Who knows, we might do yoga next time. But today we're going to talk about cutting mats, cutting, different ways that different quilters cut using their rotary cutting system.
And here is a cutting mat.
Here's a cutting mat right here, and a rotary cutting ruler, and a rotary cutter.
Right.
And, it wasn't a scandal. I think like one person mentioned it. And then one of our quilting experts at
an editorial.
Love of Quilting, they said, ooh, you're using the mat lines to cut your fabric. Like, that's a no-no, or that's not the way you're supposed to do it. And I was like, wait a minute, why not? So Mom and I had a discussion about it, and we thought that would be a great thing to talk about today on Quilty, because a lot of newer quilters, they're cutting on a rotary cutting mat for the first time, or they're new at it.
We want to give you perspective, because one of my messages the years I've taught quilting is, if anyone says there's only one way to do something, if you take a class from a teacher that says only one way to do something, run away as fast as you can, because there's lots of ways to do any kind of craft, and you want to find the way that's best for you. And if you buy a cutting mat at a quilt shop, it's going to have lines, and so the natural progression of thought is, well, I'm supposed to use those lines.
Exactly.
And you can. I just don't.
Exactly. There's different ways to, wasn't that skin a cat? What a horrible thing to say. So hand me that piece of fabric, and I'm going to show you, like, if I was going to cut strips, and so often we do, if I was going to cut strips, I'd press my fabric and make it look all nice, and I'd clean up my edge, and I use the lines on the mat because
which is fine.
They're there, and I also... So I want to clean up my edge, so I'd line up the bottom edge of my fabric with one of those lines.
So that's parallel.
And then I would, if I wanted to clean up my edge, I'd just bring it just
Scooch
over.
it.
If Josh can see that, I would scoot it over just so I'm hanging off the edge of
and
one
let me
of
jump
those
in here.
straight
You're
lines.
doing a lot of arranging. See?
Yep,
Okay, this is because my whole approach is for efficiencies. There's nothing wrong with this, but you're having to think around with the fabric.
I kind of did it for TV. To be honest, it would be faster if I was just doing it.
And I'm in your way.
Yes, and you're in my way, but it's okay. So I put my ruler down on this side because I like a lot of ruler to keep things still, like to keep things flat, keep them from moving around.
Stable.
So I'd line it up to keep it stable. I'd line it up with my bottom and my top, take my rotary cutter, and I'd clean up my edge. Okay? Toss that away. Okay. So I'm going to cut a 3.5 inch strip. So 3.5 inches is right there. Line up my ruler there. Line up my ruler here. Josh wants to get that one, on both sides. 3.5 inches, and then shishink.
So you're really kind of straddling the fabric with the ruler and reading the lines from one side to the other.
Exactly. That's how I do it. Now, how would you do it?
Well, it's a great way to do it. There's not a thing wrong with that way. What I would do is, let's just move this out of the way, and I'm going to turn the mat over.
Okay.
And we're going to turn this mat over to where it's just a blank slate.
Right.
And so what I'm going to do is we're going to do the same process. So, and in fact, my fabric is usually at a diagonal on there, because then I've got more mat to work with.
Different strokes, different generations.
Okay. And I'm gonna fold it. Well, I'll just do it the same way you did. And what I might do is, let me show you, put on the cutting glove. Yeah. Is I would get my hand in there. And what I might do, what did you cut, 3.5 inches? Is, okay, first let me say is, a lot of times we need 1/8 of an inch, we need 1/4 of an inch, and I've got all those lines on my ruler. Right. I let my ruler do the work for me rather than the mat lines, because who knows what line I will need, and I don't like scooching my fabric around.
Sure.
It seems like the lines are always in the wrong place for me. Okay? So if I want to cut a 3.5 inch strip, okay, I might, because I also want to flatten my fabric with my ruler, is I'm going to overcut it in this case. So I'm going to put my ruler parallel to my fold rather than a line, and I'm going to
open it up.
This is a nice cutter.
Isn't this nice?
Okay, and then what I'm going to do, I overcut it a little bit. I'm going to flip this around. And
See,
you might say this is
I
positioning.
don't like what you talking about
Okay.
me futzing around?
Yeah.
Look what you're doing. You're flipping
Okay.
your fabric. I don't think so.
Okay, so that's the way.
It looks very nice, Mom. It's very. No, it is. It's
I
the
like
exact
it.
same thing.
I like your
It's the-
strip too.
It's the exact same thing, but that's the point. But I will say one thing is, and it just occurred to me as we were talking about this episode, is I think one of the reasons I do it the way I do it is that on this show, it's really we're not getting into a ton of the 7/8 cuts and stuff
Right.
yet. We will, but these really beginner episodes, the Quilty is a beginner show. We do a lot of 2.5 inches, 3.5 inches, maybe 2 1/4 or something.
Well, and I would say it provides security for people that are learning
Yeah.
to cut. And
Yeah.
whatever method works for you, as long as you turn out accurate patchwork and beautiful quilts,
Mm-hmm.
and you please yourself and you're comfortable, it's a hobby. So, find the way. And I've also used the analogy for cooking is there's just different ways depending on where you're headed, whether you're going to whisk an egg or use a fork. Or there's just learn as much as you can. That's my approach.
Absolutely. And if somebody has a different way to do something, watch them, see. You might learn something that you want to take away for yourself in your own quilting and your own sewing at home. So thanks, Mom, so much. This was great. These lessons are what make quilters great.
Is our time up already?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, this was like a...
Let's go to yoga class.
Well, I think we have time.
Let's get our mats.
Quilty is brought to you by APQS, handcrafted quilting machines. Aurifil Italian thread, perfectly suited for all your quilting projects. Baby Lock, for the love of sewing. Clothworks, inspiring creativity with art on fabric. Havel's Sewing, when you need to cut it close, choose Havel's. B&B, our fabrics, your lifestyle. Quiltology, the urban quilt space.